The thunder rolled across the Montana sky as MacKay pressed her daughter's face to her chest, shielding the child from the cruel words being hurled at her by the town council of Willow Creek. The year was 1878, and the small mining town had little tolerance for a woman who'd taken in an orphaned Native American child. "You've had your say, Mrs. MacKay," Mayor Hobbs declared, his mustache quivering with indignation. "The decision is final. That Indian child cannot stay in this town." Not after what happened to the Miller family last month. Faith's hands trembled as she clutched 3-year-old Sarah closer. "She's just a baby. She had nothing to do with the raid. I found her abandoned, starving." "Don't matter none," spat Jeremiah Wilkins, the town's most prosperous merchant. "Her kind ain't welcome here. Not anymore." The dimly lit town hall seemed to close in around Faith. The faces of the 12 men who comprised the council were set in stone, unmoved by the tears streaming down her face. She had come to Willow Creek 2 years ago after her husband died of consumption back east, hoping to make a new start as the town's schoolteacher. When she'd found Sarah 6 months ago the sole survivor of a wagon attack, she couldn't bear to leave her. Now that act of compassion was being thrown back in her face. "You have until sundown tomorrow," Mayor Hobbs continued, "to either send that child away or leave Willow Creek for good." Faith lifted her chin. "Where exactly do you expect me to send her?" "There's a mission 50 miles north that takes in Indian orphans," offered the Reverend, the only council member who wouldn't meet her eyes. "You mean where they'll beat her language and culture out of her?" Faith's voice rose. "I will not." "Then you'll have to go too," Hobbs said flatly. Decisions made. The back door of the town hall creaked open, drawing all eyes. A tall figure stepped inside, removing his hat as he entered. Faith recognized Ethan Harrington instantly. Everyone in town did. The rancher rarely came to town meetings, preferring to keep to his sprawling property miles outside Willow Creek. His presence commanded attention, though he hadn't spoken a word. "What's all this about?" Ethan asked, his deep voice carrying across the room. Mayor Hobbs straightened. Even he seemed to defer slightly to Harrington, whose cattle operation employed half the men in the territory during roundup season. "Town business, Harrington. Mrs. MacKay here has been harboring an Indian child." "After what happened to the Millers—" "I know what happened to the Millers," Ethan interrupted. "That was Blackfoot raiders from up north. This child looks Cheyenne, if I'm not mistaken." He glanced at Sarah, who peered at him with large, dark eyes from the safety of Faith's embrace. Faith nodded, surprised. "Yes, her village was peaceful. They traded with settlers." "Don't matter what tribe," Wilkins interjected. "People are scared. They don't want no Indians in town, peaceful or otherwise." Ethan's eyes narrowed as he studied the council. "So you're telling her to leave the child?" "That's right," Mayor Hobbs confirmed. "Either the child goes or Mrs. MacKay goes with her." The room fell silent as Ethan walked slowly toward Faith and Sarah. He stood beside them, facing the council. His presence was reassuring, like a solid wall between them and the angry men. "Then I'll leave with her," Ethan said simply. Faith's head snapped up, her eyes wide with disbelief. She barely knew this man beyond his reputation and the occasional nod of greeting on the street. The council erupted in protest. "Now see here, Harrington, you can't be serious. This ain't your concern." Ethan raised a hand, silencing them. "Mrs. MacKay is the only decent teacher this town has ever had. That child is innocent. If you're forcing them out because of fear and ignorance, then I want no part of this town either." "You'd risk your standing for them?" Mayor Hobbs asked incredulously. "I'm not risking anything," Ethan replied calmly. "I'm making a choice." He turned to Faith, his voice softening. "Mrs. MacKay, I have a proposition. My ranch has plenty of room. You and Sarah would be welcome there until you decide what's next. I've been meaning to hire a tutor for my foreman's children anyway." Faith blinked rapidly, trying to process what was happening. "Mr. Harrington, I think about it," he said gently. "You have until sundown tomorrow, apparently." His eyes, a striking shade of green, held her steadily. "Whatever you decide, I'll help you." With that, he nodded to the council, replaced his hat, and strode out, leaving a stunned silence in his wake. The next morning, Faith packed her meager possessions with trembling hands. Sarah watched from the small bed they shared in the back room of the schoolhouse that had been Faith's home. "Are we going away?" Sarah asked in the halting English she'd learned in the 6 months since Faith had found her. Yes, sweetheart, Faith replied, trying to sound cheerful. We're going to stay at Mr. Harrington's ranch for a while. Will the angry men come there? Faith paused in her packing. No, darling, Mr. Harrington won't let them bother us. She didn't know if that was true, but the conviction in Ethan Harrington's voice yesterday had given her hope. Still, she couldn't fathom why he'd offered to help them. The Harrington Ranch was the largest spread in the territory, and Ethan was known to be fair but private. Some said he was standoffish since his return from the war 13 years ago. A knock at the door startled her from her thoughts. Faith opened it to find Ethan himself standing there, hat in hand. "Morning, Mrs. MacKay," he greeted her. "I thought you might need help with your things." "Mr. Harrington," Faith stammered, "Thank you, but I should tell you I haven't decided if I'm accepting your offer." His expression remained neutral. "Fair enough. Where else might you go?" Faith's silence was answer enough. "The stagecoach east doesn't come for another week," Ethan continued, "and the towns nearby are likely to have the same reaction as Willow Creek. At least at my ranch you'll have time to think." Faith nodded slowly. "You're right, and I appreciate your kindness more than I can say." As they loaded her trunks onto his wagon, Faith noticed several townspeople watching from across the street. Some looked angry, others guilty. Her friend Clara Thompson hurried over, pressing a basket into her hands. "Some food for the journey," Clara whispered. "I'm so sorry, Faith, this isn't right." "Thank you," Faith said, fighting tears. "Will you look after the school?" "Of course, though none of us can teach like you." Clara glanced nervously at Ethan, who was helping Sarah climb onto the wagon seat. "Be careful, Faith. People talk about Harrington. He keeps to himself too much." Faith squeezed her friend's hand. "He's the only one who stood up for us." The journey to Harrington Ranch took 3 hours. Sarah fell asleep against Faith's side while Ethan drove in comfortable silence. As they crested a hill, Faith gasped at the sight below. The ranch spread across a lush valley with a large main house, bunkhouse, barns, and corrals. Cattle dotted the surrounding grassland, and a creek glittered in the distance. "It's beautiful," she murmured. "My father started it," Ethan said. "I expanded it after the war." "Were you in the Union Army?" He nodded. "Cavalry, came back in '65 to find my father ailing. He passed the next year." Faith studied his profile. "I'm sorry. It was a long time ago." He clicked to the horses as they started down the slope. "The main house has a separate wing with 2 bedrooms. You and Sarah will have privacy there." "Mr. Harrington," Faith began carefully, "why are you doing this?" "You hardly know us." He was quiet for so long that Faith thought he might not answer. Finally, he said, "During the war, I saw what hate and fear can do, what men are capable of when they decide someone is other. I won't stand by and watch it happen in my own town, especially not to a child." They pulled up to the main house, a handsome 2-story structure of timber and stone. A woman emerged from the front door, tall, silver-haired, with a no-nonsense expression. "Mrs. Abernathy," Ethan called as he set the brake. "Our guests have arrived." "About time," the woman replied. "I've had the rooms aired out since you sent word this morning." Ethan helped Faith down from the wagon. "Mrs. Abernathy is my housekeeper and has run this place since before I was born. She'll show you to your rooms." Sarah had awakened and was staring wide-eyed at everything around her. When a ranch hand walked by leading a pony, she pointed excitedly. "Horse, small horse." Ethan smiled, the first real smile Faith had seen from him. "That's right. Would you like to see the horses later?" Sarah nodded enthusiastically. "I'll show you the stables after you're settled," he promised. Mrs. Abernathy led them through the house, which was surprisingly elegant for a bachelor rancher. Faith's quarters were spacious and comfortable, with a connected bedroom for Sarah. There was even a small sitting room with bookshelves. "Dinner's at 6 sharp," Mrs. Abernathy informed them. "Mr. Harrington doesn't tolerate lateness." Once she'd left, Faith sat on the edge of the bed, overwhelmed by the day's events. Sarah explored the room, touching everything with wonder. "Pretty," she declared, running her small hand over the quilt. "Yes, it is," Faith agreed. "We'll be safe here for a while." Later that afternoon, true to his word, Ethan showed them the stables. Sarah was delighted by the horses, and Ethan patiently taught her how to offer an apple on a flat palm. Faith watched in amazement as the normally solemn child giggled when a mare's soft muzzle tickled her hand. "You're good with her," Faith observed. Ethan shrugged. "Children are easier than adults. They don't judge." Unlike the town council, Faith said bitterly. They're afraid, Ethan replied. Fear makes people cruel. What about you? Aren't you afraid of retribution for helping us? He turned to face her fully. Mrs. MacKay, please call me Faith. Faith then, and I'm Ethan. He adjusted his hat. I employ half the men in the county. I buy supplies from Wilkins' store in quantities that keep his business afloat. The bank holds loans on half the farms around here, but I pay cash. They can dislike my decisions, but they can't afford to cross me. The matter-of-fact way he said it, without a hint of boasting, made Faith realize just how powerful her benefactor truly was. Still, she persisted, why risk any goodwill on our account? Ethan watched as Sarah patted a chestnut mare's neck. Because it's right, he said simply. And because I've seen too many children like her sent to places where their spirit gets broken along with their language. That evening at dinner, Faith observed Ethan in his home environment. He was quieter than most men she knew, but not unfriendly. He answered Sarah's endless questions about the ranch with remarkable patience. When he spoke about the land, his cattle, or his horses, a passion emerged that transformed his usually reserved demeanor. Days passed, and Faith found herself settling into a routine. Each morning, she taught the foreman's 3 children alongside Sarah in a small room Ethan had set up as a schoolhouse. In the afternoons, she helped Mrs. Abernathy with household tasks or worked in the kitchen garden. She learned more about her host through observation and the occasional comment from the ranch hands or Mrs. Abernathy. Ethan had returned from the war changed, they said. Once sociable and quick to laugh, he now kept to himself. He was fair to his workers, generous even, but maintained a distance. War does that, Mrs. Abernathy told Faith one afternoon as they shelled peas on the porch. Takes boys and returns strangers. One evening, about 2 weeks after their arrival, Faith found Ethan alone on the porch after Sarah had gone to bed. He was smoking a pipe, gazing at the stars that blanketed the clear Montana sky. May I join you? Faith asked hesitantly. He nodded, gesturing to the chair beside him. Couldn't sleep, too many thoughts. She settled into the chair, wrapping her shawl tighter against the night chill. I received a letter today from Clara. The town council is threatening to confiscate the schoolhouse if I don't return without Sarah. Ethan's jaw tightened. They can't legally do that. Perhaps not, but they will anyway, Faith sighed. I need to decide what to do. I can't impose on your hospitality forever. You're not imposing, Ethan said firmly. The children are learning, Sarah is thriving, and Mrs. Abernathy appreciates your help. He paused. I appreciate your company. The simple statement sent an unexpected warmth through Faith. Over the past weeks, she'd grown to admire this quiet, principled man. His kindness to Sarah had touched her heart in ways she hadn't anticipated. Still, she insisted, I need to make plans. Perhaps I could find a position in Helena or Fort Benton, somewhere larger where people might be more accepting. Ethan was silent for a long moment. Or you could stay. Faith turned to look at him. Stay, permanently. He tapped his pipe against the porch rail, not meeting her eyes. The position of teacher for the ranch children is yours for as long as you want it. There's talk of more families settling nearby. Soon we might have enough children for a proper school. That's very generous, Faith managed, her heart racing inexplicably. It's selfish, actually, Ethan admitted, finally meeting her gaze. I've grown accustomed to seeing you and Sarah at my dinner table. The house feels more like a home than it has in years. Before Faith could respond, hoofbeats approached from the main road. Ethan stood, instantly alert. A rider appeared in the yard, silhouetted against the moonlight. Harrington, the man called. It was Deputy Marshal Tucker from Willow Creek. Evening, Tucker, Ethan replied calmly. What brings you out so late? Tucker dismounted, glancing at Faith with a frown. Town business. Mayor sent me with a message. He held out an envelope. Council voted. They're demanding Mrs. MacKay return to face charges of stealing school property. What property? Faith demanded, stepping forward. Books, supplies. Mayor says they belong to the town. Ethan took the envelope but didn't open it. Those charges are fabricated and you know it, Tucker. This is just another attempt to force Mrs. MacKay to abandon Sarah. The deputy shifted uncomfortably. Just delivering the message, Harrington. Mayor says if she doesn't come voluntarily, they'll send the sheriff next time. Tell Hobbs that Mrs. MacKay is under my protection, Ethan said, his voice dangerously quiet. And if he or the sheriff sets foot on my property with these false charges, they'll regret it." Tucker paled visibly. "I'll tell him." He mounted his horse and tipped his hat nervously. "Evening, Madam Harrington." With that, he turned his horse and rode away. Faith's hands trembled. "They won't stop, will they?" "They will." Ethan's voice was certain. "But I meant what I said. You're under my protection now." "I can't ask you to fight my battles you didn't ask," he interrupted. "I offered." He stepped closer. "Faith, since you arrived, something has changed here, not just for Sarah but for me. I've been alone with my ghosts for too long." The intensity in his eyes made Faith's breath catch. "Ethan, I'm not asking anything of you," he assured her quickly. "Just know that you have a place here for as long as you want it." That night, Faith lay awake long after Sarah had fallen asleep beside her. Ethan's words echoed in her mind. She too had felt the change since coming to the ranch, a sense of belonging she hadn't experienced since before her husband's death. And then there was Ethan himself. His quiet strength, his principles, the gentle way he was with Sarah. Faith couldn't deny that her feelings for him had grown beyond gratitude. The next morning, Faith was teaching the children when she heard a commotion in the yard. Looking out the window, she saw Sheriff Davis from Willow Creek with 2 deputies. Ethan stood facing them, his stance relaxed but alert. "Stay here," Faith told the children. "Keep working on your sums." She hurried outside, her heart pounding. As she approached, she caught the sheriff's words. "Harboring a fugitive, Harrington. The council's filed formal charges. Mrs. MacKay is not a fugitive," Ethan replied calmly. "These charges are false, and you know it." Sheriff Davis noticed Faith approaching. "Mrs. MacKay, I have orders to escort you back to Willow Creek to answer charges of theft and abandonment of post." "This is absurd," Faith said. "I took nothing but my personal belongings." "Council says different," Davis shrugged. "Not my place to judge, just to bring you in." "She's not going anywhere," Ethan stated flatly. The tension in the yard was palpable. Ranch hands had stopped their work to watch, some moving closer to Ethan's side. "Don't make this difficult, Harrington," Davis warned. "I've got the law on my side." "You've got Hobbs' corruption on your side," Ethan countered. "Faith hasn't broken any laws." Sheriff Davis's hand hovered near his pistol. "Step aside, Harrington." Faith moved forward, placing a restraining hand on Ethan's arm. "I don't want anyone hurt because of me." "Listen to the lady," Davis said. "Come along peacefully, Mrs. MacKay. We'll sort this out in town." Ethan covered Faith's hand with his own. "Wait," he turned to the sheriff. "I have a proposal. Give me 2 days. I'll ride to Helena and speak with the territorial judge myself. Let him decide if these charges have merit." Davis hesitated. "Mayor won't like the delay." "Mayor doesn't have to like it," Ethan replied. "Unless he wants to explain to the territorial governor why he's persecuting a schoolteacher for taking in an orphan child." After a tense moment, Davis nodded reluctantly. 2 days, Harrington, then I come back with more men." Once the sheriff and his deputies had ridden away, Faith turned to Ethan. "You can't keep defying them for us." "I can and I will." His eyes held a determination that brooked no argument. "I'm riding to Helena today. Judge Morris is a fair man. He'll see through this charade." "What if he doesn't?" "Then we'll think of something else." He squeezed her hand. "I won't let them separate you from Sarah, I promise." Ethan left within the hour, pushing his stallion hard toward Helena. Faith spent the next 2 days in anxious waiting, trying to maintain normalcy for Sarah and the other children. Mrs. Abernathy was a steady presence, her practical nature a comfort. "That man would move mountains for you," the housekeeper observed as they prepared dinner on the second evening. "He's doing this for justice," Faith protested weakly. Mrs. Abernathy snorted. "Been with Mr. Ethan since he was born, never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you." Faith felt her cheeks warm. "He's a good man helping someone in trouble." "He's a man in love," Mrs. Abernathy countered bluntly. "Question is, what are you going to do about it?" Before Faith could respond, hoofbeats approached. They rushed outside to see Ethan returning, accompanied by an older man in a dark suit. "Judge Morris," Mrs. Abernathy whispered. "He came himself." Ethan dismounted quickly, his face showing the strain of hard riding. "Faith," he called. "The judge has agreed to hear our case here tonight." Judge Morris removed his hat as he approached. "Mrs. MacKay, Mr. Harrington has told me quite a story. I'd like to hear your side of it." They gathered in Ethan's study, where Faith recounted everything finding Sarah, the town's initial tolerance that soured after the raid on the Miller family, the council's ultimatum. Judge Morris listened intently, occasionally asking questions. "And the child," he asked finally, "may I meet her?" Sarah had been playing with the foreman's children under Mrs. Abernathy's watchful eye. When Faith brought her into the study, she clung shyly to Faith's skirts. Judge Morris smiled kindly. "Hello, young lady," Sarah peeked up at him. "Hello, can you tell me your name?" "Sarah," she replied. Then proudly, "Sarah MacKay," the judge's eyebrows rose. "You've adopted her legally, Mrs. MacKay." Faith shook her head. "Not yet, I hadn't had the chance before. Everything happened." "I see." Judge Morris studied Sarah thoughtfully. "Would you like to, if possible?" "More than anything," Faith answered without hesitation. The judge nodded. "I believe I understand the situation now." He looked at Ethan. "You were right to bring this to my attention, Mr. Harrington. This reeks of prejudice, not justice." Ethan's shoulders relaxed visibly. "What will you do?" "I'll ride to Willow Creek tomorrow and speak with Mayor Hobbs myself. The charges against Mrs. MacKay will be dismissed." His expression hardened. "And I'll have a few words about the rule of law versus the rule of fear." Faith felt tears of relief spring to her eyes. "Thank you, Your Honor." "Don't thank me yet," Judge Morris cautioned. "This resolves the legal matter, but not the practical one. Willow Creek may no longer be a safe or welcoming place for you and the child." "They'll stay here," Ethan said immediately, "for as long as they need." Judge Morris studied them both with shrewd eyes. "I see. Well then, if you're planning to make this arrangement permanent, Mrs. MacKay, I suggest you begin adoption proceedings for the child as soon as possible." After the judge retired to the guest room for the night, Faith found Ethan alone in his study, staring into the fire. "I don't know how to thank you," she said softly. He turned to her. "No thanks needed." "But there is," she insisted, moving closer. "You've risked so much for us, your standing in the community, even your safety. Some things are worth the risk." His gaze held her steadily. "Some people," Faith's heart quickened. "Ethan, these past weeks, I've come to care for you more than I thought possible." He reached for her hands, holding them gently. "I started falling in love with you the moment you stood in that town hall refusing to abandon Sarah. Every day since has only deepened those feelings." "Love," Faith whispered, hardly daring to believe. "Love," he confirmed. "I know it's sudden. I know you came here out of necessity, not choice. If you don't feel the same," Faith silenced him by stepping closer. "I do feel the same. It surprised me too how quickly, how completely you've come to mean everything to me." Ethan's hands trembled slightly as he cupped her face. "I never thought I'd find this again. After the war, I thought that part of me was dead." "It wasn't," Faith murmured. "It was just waiting." When he kissed her, it felt like coming home, like every hardship and loss had led them to this moment. This man who had risked everything for her and a child who wasn't even his. Judge Morris departed the next morning for Willow Creek, promising to return with news. 3 days later, he was back, a satisfied expression on his weathered face. "It's done," he announced over dinner. "The charges are dropped. Mayor Hobbs was surprisingly cooperative once I mentioned a federal investigation into civil rights violations." Faith laughed with relief. "I can hardly believe it's over." "Not quite," the judge said, reaching into his coat pocket. "I've brought adoption papers. If you're still interested in making Sarah legally yours, Mrs. MacKay, we can proceed immediately." "Yes," Faith said without hesitation. "More than anything, good." Judge Morris glanced between her and Ethan with knowing eyes. "And while I'm here with my judicial authority, is there perhaps another legal matter I might assist with?" Ethan cleared his throat. "Actually, Your Honor, there is." He looked at Faith. "I had planned to do this more romantically, but—" He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. "Faith MacKay, I love you, I love Sarah, I want us to be a family here if you'll have me." Faith's eyes filled with tears as he opened the box to reveal a simple but beautiful diamond ring. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes to all of it." Sarah, who had been watching with wide eyes, clapped her hands. "Family?" Judge Morris chuckled. "Well then, it seems I have 2 ceremonies to perform." That evening, in Ethan's study with Mrs. Abernathy and the ranch foreman as witnesses, Faith and Ethan exchanged vows. The adoption papers were signed immediately after, making Sarah legally Faith's daughter, soon to be Faith and Ethan's daughter. As the judge prepared to leave the next morning, he took Faith aside. "You found a good man, Mrs. Harrington. Not many would have taken the stand he did." Faith smiled, watching as Ethan showed Sarah how to feed an orphaned lamb. "I know, he saw what was right and did it, regardless of the cost." "That's rare in this world," the judge observed. "Treasure it." 3 months later, Faith stood on the porch of what was now her home, watching as Ethan taught Sarah to ride her very own pony. The little girl's delighted laughter carried across the yard, a sound that had become wonderfully common. Word had spread about Ethan's stand against the town council. To Faith's surprise, several families had approached her about teaching their children. With Ethan's blessing, she had converted an unused barn into a proper schoolhouse, now attended by 12 children from the surrounding area, including 2 other Native American children, whose families had been afraid to send them to Willow Creek. Clara had visited from town last week, bringing news that Mayor Hobbs had lost the recent election. The new mayor had extended an invitation for Faith and Ethan to return, but they had declined. Their life was here now. Ethan looked up, catching her eye across the yard. His smile, once so rare, now a daily gift, warmed her from the inside. He lifted Sarah from the pony and set her on his shoulders, carrying her toward the house. "Mama, did you see?" Sarah called excitedly. "I ride by myself, I saw, darling," Faith replied, her heart full. "You were very brave." Ethan set Sarah down and she raced into the house, eager to tell Mrs. Abernathy about her adventure. When they were alone, Ethan pulled Faith into his arms. "Happy?" he asked, searching her face. "Completely," she assured him, resting her head against his chest. "I never imagined when they told me to leave Sarah that it would lead us here." "I'm glad I was in that town hall that day," Ethan murmured, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "So am I," Faith whispered. "So am I." As the sun set over the Montana mountains, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, Faith marveled at how a moment of crisis had led to such profound joy. When the town had forced her to choose between her principles and security, she had chosen love and found, unexpectedly, that love had chosen her right back.